Imagine holding a message that is practically guaranteed to save all of humanity. I mean, it's the ultimate lifeline. What is the very first thing you do with it?
Well, you'd think you'd shout it from the rooftops, wouldn't you?
Right. You would broadcast it as loudly and clearly as possible. You'd put it on every billboard, translate it into every language, and, make sure a 5-year-old could understand it.
That would be the logical approach, yes.
But, well, today's stack of sources argues that Jesus did the exact opposite. He deliberately scrambled the message so that, almost no one could understand it.
It really is a profound departure from how we typically view these texts.
Yeah.
And for you listening, whether you are fascinated by ancient history or studying theology or just curious about how complex belief systems are constructed, this deep dive is definitely going to challenge your assumptions.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we usually think of parables, like the Good Samaritan or the Prodigal Son, as gentle, accessible moral fables. But the sources you've shared with us today, they lay out a highly intricate framework where parables are, well, anything but simple.
Yeah, and so our mission today is to unpack the architecture of this specific theology. We are going to explore exactly why this framework claims parables were used as a form of divine cryptography.
Which is a fascinating concept in itself.
It really is. And we'll look at what massive secrets they are actually hiding regarding the structure of the world, and finally, the very specific claims about when and how these codes are ultimately broken.
Spot on. And before we get into the mechanics of this, I just want to clearly frame our approach for you, the listener. We are examining some highly structured, exclusive religious doctrines today.
Right. We're not picking sides here.
Precisely. Our goal is not to endorse these claims as ultimate truth, nor are we here to criticize or debunk them. We are essentially just mapping out the internal logic of the text you provided. We want to understand how this specific belief system functions from the inside out.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the very first concept in these sources, it just stopped me in my tracks. It's this massive historical paradox.
The paradox of hiding the message.
Exactly. I'm reading the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, and the disciples asked Jesus flat out, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" And the answer given isn't, because they love a good story.
No, the text essentially says the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to the disciples, but deliberately withheld from everyone else.
Right. So why hide the ball?
Well, the texts point to two very distinct reasons, and the first is entirely strategic. It's about concealment from an active threat.
An active threat? Like who?
Well, if you view the biblical narrative through the lens of these sources, God has an enemy. The devil, often referred to here as the serpent, and this enemy has followers, described as the serpent's seed.
Okay, I follow.
So the logic of the doctrine is that if the adversary understood the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, they would actively sabotage the divine plan. Or perhaps they might falsely claim salvation for themselves.
So it's almost like a secret club password, like a divine handshake to keep the riffraff out of the clubhouse.
I wouldn't call it a club password, really, because that implies a sort of casual exclusivity just for the sake of being elite.
Right, like a treehouse rule.
Exactly. But the stakes described in these sources are much higher. It's framed strictly as an active wartime scenario. Think of military cryptography. God's plan is essentially classified intelligence.
Oh, I see. So it's more like a commander in World War II broadcasting over the radio. The eagle has left the nest and is flying toward Grandma's house.
That's a brilliant analogy, actually.
Thanks. Because the enemy army is actively intercepting the radio chatter, right? They hear every single word clearly, but because they don't have the cipher, they have absolutely no idea that the eagle is a bomber squadron and Grandma's house is an ammunition depot. The message is hidden in plain sight.
That is a much closer parallel. The text essentially functions as encrypted radio chatter. The opposing forces hear the stories about seeds, fields, and weddings, but the actual target of the message remains totally opaque to them.
Wow.
But, concealment is only half the equation. The second reason parables were used, according to this framework, isn't just tactical. It is legalistic. It's about fulfilling ancient prophecy.
Legalistic how? Like a contract.
Precisely like a contract. If we look at the Old Testament,
Yes.
specifically Psalm 78, verse 2, there's the very clear mandate.
What does it say?
It says, "I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things, things from of old." And this was written centuries before Jesus.
Oh.
So, within the logic of these sources, Jesus wasn't just making a tactical decision on the battlefield. He was legally required to speak in parables to prove his identity.
Oh, I get it. Because if he just came out and spoke plainly, he would actually be breaking the prophecy that said the Messiah would speak in riddles.
Exactly.
He had to utter those dark sayings to prove he was the guy the ancient texts were talking about.
Yes, it is a burden of proof.
Yeah.
The parables are the evidence that he is operating under the divine mandate.
Okay, so if parables are military-grade cryptography meant to keep the devil out and fulfill a prophecy, the next logical question is, well, what is the actual classified intel they are guarding?
Right, what's in the vault?
Exactly. What is so dangerous or powerful that it requires this level of encryption? Because looking through these texts, it's not just a list of moral rules. The sources argue the parables contain the literal blueprint of the kingdom of heaven.
They do, yes.
And they obsess over one specific concept, the secret of the seed.
The seed is the absolute fulcrum of this entire theology. I mean, to understand it, we have to look closely at their interpretation of Matthew 13.
Walk me through it.
The parable states that a man sows good seed in his field. But while everyone is sleeping, his enemy sneaks in and sows weeds among the wheat. Then the enemy just leaves.
Now, if I'm just reading this casually, I'm thinking, okay, the field is the earth. There are good people doing good things and bad people doing bad things, and they all just kind of live on the same planet. Simple enough.
And that is exactly the interpretation these texts are actively fighting against.
Wait, really?
Yes. They argue that reading the field as the secular world is a fundamental misunderstanding of the encryption. According to this highly specific framework, the field is Jesus's church, the religious world itself.
Wait, I need to pause on that. That is a massive distinction.
It completely shifts the paradigm.
Yeah. So the claim isn't just that there's evil out in the secular world. The claim is that for the last 2,000 years, the devil's seed has been planted, watered, and grown entirely inside the Christian church.
That is the core assertion. The text dictates that Jesus planted the good seed, which represents the Word of God. This seed grows into the sons of God.
Okay.
But the enemy, the devil, planted his own seed, which are false teachings or lies, and those grow into the sons of the devil. And because they were planted in the exact same field, they have been growing side by side, totally entangled within the very institutions meant to represent God.
Think about the psychological stakes of that for a believer listening to this.
They are incredibly high.
If I'm sitting in a pew on a Sunday morning, and this framework is true, the person singing hymns next to me, praying to the same God, reading the exact same Bible, well, they might actually have completely different spiritual DNA.
Yes, quite right.
They are a weed, and I am wheat, or vice versa. And because the truth is hidden in a parable, neither of us actually knows it.
The psychological tension is immense. The framework suggests an invisible cosmic sorting mechanism operating beneath the surface of everyday religious practice.
That's wild.
And the weeds genuinely believe they are orthodox, traditional believers. They aren't, villains twirling their mustaches. They are simply products of the wrong seed. And this encrypted language of nature and agriculture extends far beyond just wheat and weeds.
Oh, absolutely. The imagery gets wild. We go from agriculture to something resembling like a fantasy novel.
Give me the mustard seed.
Yeah. They talk about a tiny mustard seed that somehow grows into a massive tree, and then birds come and nest in its branches. As a metaphor, what is the underlying mechanism there? Like, why birds?
Well, the mechanics of the metaphor are actually quite structured. In this doctrine, a seed contains life, right? It is the word. When a person receives that word, they grow, spiritually speaking, into a tree.
So the tree is a person.
They become a leader or an organization, yes. But the birds are the most critical component. The sources state that birds represent spirits.
Ah, okay.
So a holy spirit or an evil spirit comes to nest or dwell upon the person who has grown from that respective seed. It is an encrypted way of describing spiritual possession or divine inspiration.
It's essentially a schematic for how the spiritual world interacts with human beings. And if you think the birds are just cute wildlife, you completely miss the point.
Exactly.
But it doesn't stop with trees and birds. The sources take this decryption method and apply it to arguably the most confusing book in the entire Bible, the Book of Revelation, the apocalyptic stuff.
Indeed, they tackle the imagery of Revelation chapter 13 head-on. This is where you see descriptions of bizarre, terrifying beasts emerging from the sea.
Yeah, this part always felt like a Godzilla movie to me. You have a beast coming out of the ocean with the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion.
It's very vivid imagery.
So if I'm trying to decode this using their method, I have to assume this isn't a literal biological monster that's going to wade out of the Atlantic Ocean and crush Tokyo.
Far from it. If you read it literally, the sources argue you are falling for the encryption.
Yeah.
They insist these beasts are parables, representing specific destructive human organizations that infiltrate the religious world. And the choice of animals is not random. It is a behavioral profile.
Okay, how does that work? Break down the profile for me. Why a leopard, a bear, and a lion?
Well, consider the nature of those animals in the wild. A leopard is known for its camouflage, isn't it? It is an ambush predator.
Right.
This symbolizes how this specific destructive group operates. They sneak into the church undetected, blending in until they strike.
Oh, that makes sense. And the bare feet.
A bear uses its massive paws to crush and trample. In this theological framework, the feet represent the organization's ability to mercilessly trample over the existing church structures and the congregation, destroying their faith.
Brutal. And the mouth of the lion. Lions roar, they devour.
Exactly. The lion's mouth represents the leadership or the spokespeople of this destructive group. They speak blasphemies, they roar out false doctrines, and they spiritually devour the believers.
Well,
So when the text says a beast with a leopard body, bare feet, and a lion mouth, it is giving a highly specific, encrypted warning about a real-world organization that uses deception to infiltrate, power to crush, and false teachings to consume the church.
that completely flips the script. It takes a terrifying, chaotic nightmare image and turns it into a very precise warning label.
It does.
But this brings up a massive glaring problem. If I'm listening to this right now, I'm probably thinking, okay, if this message is encrypted so tightly and the wheat and weeds have been tangled up for 2 millennia, how does anyone ever figure it out?
That is the big question.
Right. If the code is unbreakable, the message is useless.
That is the pivotal question of the entire deep dive. How is the seal broken? And the sources do not leave this ambiguous. They offer a highly regulated, exclusive timeline and method for the ultimate decryption.
Okay, let's start with the timeline.
Let's examine the timeline first, the when.
Because according to these texts, it's not like you could just figure this out in the year 1200 if you studied hard enough.
Not at all. The texts repeatedly anchor themselves to the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 25. In this verse, Jesus explicitly states that a time is coming when he will no longer speak in figures of speech, meaning parables, but will tell people plainly about the Father.
So there is a built-in expiration date on the cryptography.
Yes. But crucially, the sources argued that this expiration date did not happen during the 2,000 years of traditional church history.
When does it happen then?
The time to speak plainly only arrives at the time of the end. They define this as the specific era when the prophecies of the book of Revelation are actively unfolding in reality.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate for the listener here. Are these sources seriously claiming that the last 2,000 years of brilliant minds, Thomas Aquinas, Augustine, all the great theologians who wrote mountains of commentary on the Bible, were they just entirely wrong?
They're claiming exactly that.
Does this text really justify tossing out centuries of scholarship?
The sources take a remarkably hard line on this, and they do not pull their punches. They claim that all those vast libraries of traditional commentary are, at best, mere guesswork. The theologians were trying to decode a message before they had the cipher.
The sources actually use a really harsh metaphor for this, right? They call the mainstream interpretations the wine of adulteries.
Yes, and we need to look at the mechanics of that metaphor too. Why wine?
Because it makes you drunk.
Precisely. Wine is intoxicating. It alters your state of mind and makes you lose your senses. And adulterated means it has been mixed with impurities.
Ah.
So they're arguing that centuries of scholars, by guessing at the parables, created a false, intoxicating doctrine mixed with human lies that has essentially poisoned the spiritual senses of the church.
Wow. So to use a modern analogy, it's like millions of people over thousands of years trying to write a definitive, authoritative review of a movie, but all they ever saw was a highly cryptic 2-minute teaser trailer.
That's a great way to put it.
And they just guessed the plot. And this framework is saying, no, the actual premiere of the movie is only happening right now in the present day.
That captures the dynamic perfectly.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the final, most crucial piece of the puzzle, the how. How is the movie actually viewed? How are the parables finally solved without just more guessing?
Because if we can't guess, what's the alternative?
The sources are unequivocal on this mechanism.
Yes.
Parables are only solved when their physical realities appear on Earth.
The physical realities, meaning the actual real-world entities that those symbols represent.
Yes.
Like the actual organization that acts like a leopard bear lion.
Precisely. You cannot decipher the prophecy by meditating in a monastery. You have to witness the real-world event happen. The shadow has to become substance. But this raises the most exclusive claim of the entire framework. Who actually gets to see the realities?
Let me guess, it's not everyone. It's not broadcast on the nightly news.
It is entirely centralized. The texts outline a very specific sequence based on Revelation chapters 10 and 22. They describe a moment where a sealed scroll representing the encrypted word is opened in heaven.
Okay, the scroll is opened, then what?
Then, an angel gives this open scroll to a single chosen individual to literally consume.
To eat the scroll, meaning like to fully internalize the decrypted message.
Yes, this individual is referred to in the texts as the promised pastor, or sometimes New John,
New John, okay.
because this singular messenger has consumed the open word, and crucially, because he has actually seen and heard all the prophetic events of Revelation unfolding in physical reality, he is uniquely equipped to decode the text.
So he's an eyewitness.
Exactly. The sources reference Revelation 22, verses 8 and 16, stating that this chosen messenger is then sent to testify to the churches.
So going back to the movie analogy, you can only understand the actual plot of the movie if you talk to the one single guy who was given a VIP private screening by the director himself.
That is the architecture of their claim. Once this exclusive eyewitness points out the physical reality, saying, this group over here is the reality of the beast, and this event over here is the reality of the weeds, well, the parable is no longer needed.
The code is broken.
Yes, the cryptography has served its purpose. The seal is broken.
It is a staggering claim when you step back and look at the implications. It completely centralizes authority. Think about the average person sitting at home.
It changes their entire relationship with the text.
Totally. Under this framework, you can't just open your Bible in your living room, pray for guidance, and figure out the deep truths yourself, because the text is military-grade encryption. And you can't rely on your pastor's commentary from the 1800s because the scroll was still sealed back then. You have absolutely no choice but to find the one guy holding the decryption key.
And if you understand that centralization, you begin to understand the intense urgency and the profound psychological appeal found within these sources. It turns everyday believers into cosmic insiders.
Oh, for sure.
If the harvest is happening right now, if the wheat is actively being separated from the weeds, and only one messenger on earth knows what the actual wheat looks like, well, listening to that messenger becomes a matter of absolute spiritual survival. It's not an academic debate. It's a rescue mission.
Wow. This has been an intense ride. Let's take a breath and summarize the incredible journey we've just taken through today's stack of sources.
A lot to take in.
It is. We started by looking at parables, which most of us think of as easy to understand moral stories. But we explored how this specific doctrine reframes them as high-stakes, encrypted wartime codes designed specifically to keep the adversary in the dark while legally fulfilling ancient prophecy.
We then unpacked what those codes were actually protecting. Not just life advice, but the ultimate classified intel. The secret of the two seeds.
The wheat and the weeds.
Exactly. The assertion that the sons of God and the sons of the devil have been growing indistinguishably within the exact same religious field, the church, for 2,000 years.
And finally, we looked at how this framework claims these millennia-old mysteries are ultimately unsealed. Not through scholarly study and not gradually throughout history, but exclusively at the end of times, by a singular, promised eyewitness who actually sees the physical realities that the parables metaphorically predicted.
Connecting all of this back to you, the listener, I think what this deep dive beautifully demonstrates is how radically the interpretation of a single text can shift based on the underlying framework you bring to it.
It's like night and day.
Truly. Depending on your lens, reading an ancient text can transform from a gentle, comforting exercise in moral philosophy into a high-stakes, apocalyptic decoding mission that challenges absolutely everything you thought you knew about history, theology, and your own identity.
It really does force you to look at the world differently, and it leaves me with this final, lingering question for you to mull over today.
I'm intrigued.
If these sources argue that parables were used as an elaborate, invisible test to separate two types of people without them even realizing it, what other seemingly simple stories, popular myths, or everyday media in our own modern culture might be hiding a secondary, highly exclusive message?
That's a fascinating thought.
Right. When we look at the world around us, are we just seeing the scrambled code, completely blind to the real image underneath? What are we reading every single day, but failing to truly see?
A brilliant question to leave off on. Thank you for joining us as we mapped out this fascinating textual landscape.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.